She flirted with my husband, right in front of me. Most women would have slapped her or screamed at him. Not me. I watched. I smiled. And then I invited her over. That night changed everything. I didn't lose my marriage. I took control of it. This is not just a story about infidelity. It's about strategy, temptation, and knowing exactly when to play your cards. What happened next will leave you breathless. Before we begin, I just want to thank all my incredible subscribers. Your support means the world to me. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of these gripping real-life stories. Your support helps us bring more powerful, emotional, and inspiring true stories to life every week. My name is Rachel Green. I'm 38 years old. I live in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been married to my husband, Daniel, for almost 12 years. We met at a 4th of July barbecue. He was charming, a little too confident, and absolutely terrible at grilling burgers. I married him anyway. We have no kids, just a quiet life, 2 Labradors, and a mortgage. It's the kind of life that feels steady, predictable, safe. Until she walked in. Her name was Amber. She was 26, loud, bold, the type who wore red lipstick in the middle of the day and heels even on grocery runs. The first time I met her, she showed up as a +1 at a neighbor's dinner party. She wore a black dress, sat right across from me, and laughed at every single thing my husband said. I watched her place her hand on Daniel's arm while laughing. I watched how he didn't pull away. That night, I didn't sleep well. Not because of what happened, but because of what I felt. It wasn't just jealousy. It was curiosity. Why her? Why now? I didn't say anything to Daniel. I didn't accuse. I didn't scream. I just watched. I've always been that way. Quiet. Patient. Observant. You learn a lot more when you're silent. A week later, Amber showed up again. This time at a neighborhood charity event. She greeted Daniel first. Hugged him. And once again, looked me in the eye while doing it. It was subtle, but calculated. She wanted me to see. And I did. When we got home that night, I asked Daniel, "Do you like her?" He looked surprised. "Who?" "Amber." He shrugged. "She's all right, I guess." Loud. I nodded. And then I told him, we should invite her for dinner sometime. He blinked at me. "What?" "Just being friendly," I smiled. But that was a lie. Let me tell you something about marriage. It doesn't die with screaming. Or cheating. Or betrayal. It dies slowly, in the silence. In the unspoken glances. In the moments where you stop looking at each other and start looking past. That's where we were. Daniel wasn't cruel. He wasn't distant, not exactly. But he wasn't present either. We were roommates playing house. Our conversations had become checklists. Did you take the dogs out? We need to pay the water bill. Dinner's in the oven. So when Amber came into the picture, I saw something wake up in him. Something I hadn't seen in years. And I wasn't angry. I was fascinated. The following Saturday, I invited Amber over for brunch. She wore a white crop top and jeans so tight they could have been painted on. She brought a bottle of wine, at 11 a.m., and called Daniel D. Like they were already friends. I poured the mimosas. Served the eggs. Laughed at her stories. And I watched. I watched Daniel lean in. I watched Amber touch his wrist when he handed her the salt. I watched my husband get flustered over another woman. And I smiled. Amber, I said sweetly, you should come over again. Maybe next weekend? She blinked at me, surprised. Really? Of course, I said, refilling her glass. I think we'll have a lot of fun. Daniel didn't say a word. But I caught the corner of his mouth twitch. And in that moment, I knew everything I needed to know. Not me. I wanted to see how far she'd go. But more than that, I wanted to see how far he would. This wasn't about saving my marriage. It was about understanding it. And the game had just begun. It's strange, isn't it? How you can live with someone, sleep beside them for years, share a bathroom, a bank account, and 1,000 quiet mornings, and still not know what they're thinking when another woman walks in the room. The Saturday after brunch, Amber came back, this time wearing a sundress so short it danced with every breeze. Daniel greeted her at the door. I stood behind him and watched her eyes land on him first. Always him first. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I said, "You came." And she smiled. That overly sweet smile that always tries too hard. Of course. I brought tequila this time. That's when Daniel chuckled. And I swear, his eyes lit up like I hadn't seen in years. I should have been heartbroken. Instead, I was intrigued. Let me take a step back and tell you about Daniel. He's 42. Tall, broad-shouldered, charming without trying. The kind of man who makes people lean in when he speaks. Not because he's loud, but because he knows when to pause. Women have always liked him. But he's always been mine. Until, maybe, now. We met when I was 25. I was working in a bookstore, writing poems on receipt paper between customers. He was the one who bought 3 novels he'd never read, just to ask me for coffee. He used to leave notes on the bathroom mirror. Whisper songs in my ear while cooking. He used to look at me like I was the only woman in the room. Lately? He looks through me. But Amber made him look again. That afternoon, I watched them drink. Laugh. Exchange glances. I wasn't just watching, I was studying. I brought chips and salsa. Turned on music. Made it feel casual. Relaxed. Inviting. Amber started dancing by herself in the living room, swaying to an old 90s R&B song. Daniel watched her hips. He didn't try to hide it. I said nothing. Instead, I got up, picked up a bowl of grapes, and walked in between them, just close enough for her perfume to hit me. Something floral, something too sweet. You two look like old friends already, I said, smiling. Amber giggled. I guess we just click. Daniel looked away. Guilty? Maybe. Excited? Definitely. That's when I knew it was time. Later that evening, when Amber left, I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. Daniel was in the kitchen pouring water, acting like he hadn't just spent 3 hours laughing with a younger woman who clearly wanted him. You like her, I said. He froze. The glass still half full in his hand. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He sighed. She's just fun. That's all. You're reading too much into it. I stepped closer. Am I? He looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a man balancing guilt and desire. And I realized. He didn't know which one was heavier. Over the next 2 weeks, I invited Amber 3 more times. Game night. Backyard barbecue. Just because wine and movie night. Every time, she got bolder. Every time, Daniel got more obvious. Every time, I watched. I wanted to see who would break first. TXT. It wasn't just about catching them. It was about testing limits. Because you don't really know someone until you watch what they'll do with the freedom they don't think you've given them. One night, Amber helped me clean the kitchen. Daniel had gone out to walk the dogs. The tension in the air was so thick it hung between us like smoke. As she wiped down the counter, she said, without looking at me, "You know, you're really cool for letting me come around so much." I smiled. "Why wouldn't I?" She paused. "Most wives would be threatened." I laughed, softly. "Should I be?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, as I lay in bed beside Daniel, I stared at the ceiling and thought about every woman who's ever been betrayed. The ones who scream. The ones who cry. The ones who walk away. I wasn't one of them. I wasn't going to break dishes or beg or chase. I was going to open the door and let them walk straight into my trap. Because there's one thing Amber didn't know. And Daniel had forgotten. I see everything. And I forget nothing. The next dinner would be just the three of us again. But this time, I'd prepare more than just food. I was going to serve truth. And temptation. And silence. And I was going to let it all unfold like I'd planned it from the start. The night started with roasted chicken, red wine, and a perfectly ironed tablecloth. But that wasn't what I was really serving. I had spent the whole day preparing, plating appetizers with precision, dimming the lights just enough, setting a playlist of slow jazz that hummed softly in the background. I lit candles. Fresh flowers in a vase. Everything looked like a magazine spread. And I did it all for one reason, to make it easy for them to sin. Amber arrived late. Of course she did. She always liked to make an entrance. This time, she wore a silk blouse, unbuttoned just a little too low, and leather pants. Lipstick redder than ever. Daniel opened the door. She kissed him on the cheek. Bold now. Too bold. I stood at the kitchen island, watching them like I was watching a scene I'd already written in my head. Because I had. "Dinner smells amazing," Amber said, walking in with that too loud laugh of hers. "It tastes even better," I replied. "Hope you're hungry." She winked at Daniel. "Starving." He laughed nervously and scratched the back of his neck like a teenage boy. I poured the wine. Generous pours. 3 glasses. One for each of us. I made a toast. To honesty, I said. Amber raised a brow. "That's an unusual toast." I smiled slowly. "Isn't it?" Dinner went as I expected. They flirted across the table. Shared private jokes right in front of me. He leaned closer when she spoke. She licked her lips when he did. I kept the wine flowing. Let them get comfortable. Let the air grow heavy with temptation. And then I excused myself. "I'll grab dessert," I said, standing up slowly. They nodded. Barely paying attention. I walked into the kitchen. But I didn't rush. I moved slowly. Quietly. Because I wanted to hear it. From the doorway, I watched. Amber leaned in close. Touched his knee. Daniel didn't move away. He looked at her. Really looked. Like he'd forgotten I existed. And then she said it. "I think about you sometimes. When I'm alone." He chuckled. "That's so?" She nodded. "Do you think about me?" He paused. Just for a second. Then, he said, "Yeah. I do." And that's when I knew I had them. I stepped back in with the cake. They jumped like guilty teenagers. "Oh, we were just," Amber stammered. "Talking," Daniel finished. I set the dessert down. Cut 3 slices. Served them without a word. And then I said, you two should spend some time alone. Amber froze. Daniel looked confused. What? I smiled. I'm tired. I think I'll head to bed early. Amber blinked. You want me to leave? No, I said, walking past them toward the hallway. Stay. Stay as long as you want. Daniel stood up. Rachel, wait, what's going on? I stopped at the doorway and looked back. Whatever happens next, I said, just know, I saw it coming. I just wanted to see who you both really are. And then I left the room. But I didn't go to bed. I went down the hallway to the guest room, where the camera feed from our dining room security cam played silently on my laptop screen. I sat down, took a deep breath, and watched. At first, they didn't move. I could see Daniel pacing. I could see Amber biting her lip. She knows, Amber whispered. Yeah, Daniel said. She knows. And then he sat beside her again. You should go, he said. She didn't. He didn't push her. She put her hand on his chest. He leaned in. And that was it. They kissed. It wasn't passionate, not at first. It was careful. Hesitant. Like they knew it was wrong but needed to cross that line just once to see how it felt. And once they did, they didn't stop. His hands on her hips. Her legs over his lap. They forgot the camera. Forgot everything. Except each other. I closed the laptop halfway through. I didn't need to see more. Not because it hurt. But because it didn't. Because I had already prepared myself for this exact moment. Because I already knew what he wanted. And I already knew how far she would go. And now, they had to deal with the cost. The next morning, I cooked breakfast. Same as always, scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. Daniel walked into the kitchen looking like he hadn't slept. Amber didn't show up. She'd left sometime in the night. I handed him a plate. Didn't say a word. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Finally, he said, You knew. I nodded. I did. He sat down slowly. Why didn't you stop it? I sipped my coffee. Because stopping it would have let you lie to me. And I wanted the truth. He didn't eat. He didn't apologize either. Because what do you say when your wife lets you cheat? When she planned the moment you thought was private? He was ashamed, but not just of what he'd done. He was ashamed that I had outplayed him. That I had watched him fall, and hadn't lifted a finger to stop it. Because I didn't need to. Sometimes, silence is louder than any scream. And now, the game was mine to end. But first, I had one more move to make. The morning after their kiss, or whatever else happened, I woke up before sunrise. I always do. Even betrayal doesn't change the body clock of a woman who's run a household for 12 years. I cooked breakfast like I always do. Set the table like nothing had changed. The toast didn't burn. The coffee was strong. The eggs fluffy. Everything was perfect. Except us. Daniel walked in looking like a man who'd barely slept. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes red. And he couldn't look at me. He sat down slowly at the table, like the chair was made of guilt and shame instead of wood and cushion. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was strategic. I let him stew in it. I buttered my toast. He cleared his throat. Then, finally, he asked it. You knew, didn't you? I nodded. He didn't ask how. He didn't ask when. Because deep down, he already knew I'd been watching all along. Why didn't you stop me? He whispered. I looked him in the eye and said calmly, because I needed to see who you were when you thought I wasn't watching. He looked down at his plate. His fork trembled in his hand. You planned that night, he said. Didn't you? I did. He swallowed hard. Everything was a setup? No, I replied. It was a mirror. I slid the silver laptop across the table. It was already open. The video paused at the moment Amber kissed him. He flinched when he saw it. I didn't sleep with her, he said quickly, as if that mattered. I tilted my head. You didn't have to. He pushed the laptop away, then dropped his face into his hands. I don't know what happened, he murmured. You forgot who I was, I said. That's what happened. He looked up at me. For the first time in years, really looked. I continued, you thought I wouldn't see. Or worse, you thought I wouldn't matter enough to notice. But I did. And I let it happen. Not because I wanted to lose you. But because I wanted to see if I already had. He reached across the table then, slow, tentative, like a man approaching a fragile thing. I messed up, Ratch. I didn't move. I love you, he added. I swear I do. Love doesn't look like that, I said, nodding at the frozen image of him and Amber. Love doesn't lie with its hands or its eyes. He went silent. An agreement. No affair. No infidelity. If breached, I take the house, the accounts, and the dogs. I watched Amber's eyes widen as she read the page. Watched Daniel's face drain of color. You planned this, he said, voice hoarse. No, I replied. I prepared for it. Amber walked out quietly. Didn't say goodbye. Daniel stood up, shaking. Is this it? He asked. No, I said. This is the beginning. Of the choice you now have to make. He looked confused. What choice? You can leave. Walk out that door and go find whatever excitement you think you lost. Or you can stay, earn every minute of my forgiveness, if I decide to give it. He swallowed hard. And what if I stay, and you don't forgive me? I stared at him. Then you'll have to live every day knowing you sat at my table, looked me in the eyes, and destroyed the one person who never stopped believing in you. He didn't say a word. He just sat back down at the table, put his face in his hands again, and cried. That was the first time I'd seen him cry in years. And for once, I didn't wipe his tears. Because some pain needs to be felt. Not comforted. It's been 6 months since that night. The night I watched the man I married fall for another woman. The night I chose silence over screaming. Strategy over revenge. Clarity over chaos. And the night I finally realized I wasn't weak for watching. I was strong for not looking away. People think betrayal comes like a slap. But more often, it comes like a whisper. A slow shift. A smile held too long. A glance that lingers. A silence that grows between words. I used to blame Amber. She was younger. Prettier. Bolder. She knew what she was doing when she touched his arm, when she wore those dresses, when she laughed a little too loud at his jokes. But now I know, Amber wasn't the danger. The real betrayal came from the man who said I do. And slowly, quietly, chose not to. Let me be honest with you. I didn't plan this story to end with heartbreak. I didn't want to become another woman sitting alone in a house she built with someone who stopped showing up. But here's the twist most people don't expect. Daniel stayed. He didn't run to Amber. He didn't beg either. He stayed. He worked. He faced me every morning like a man rebuilding something he once set fire to. And I didn't make it easy. I made him go to therapy. Alone at first. Then with me. I made him answer hard questions. I made him sit in the discomfort of the choices he made. No excuses. No soft landings. And slowly, the man I married, the one who used to leave me sticky notes on the bathroom mirror, started showing up again. He started cooking dinner. He brought home books he knew I'd love. He left his phone in the other room. He looked at me like he used to, like I wasn't just the woman who made his coffee, but the woman he chose. Do I trust him completely? Not yet. Forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a staircase. Some days I climb it. Some days I sit at the bottom, staring at the top, wondering if it's even worth it. But I haven't walked away. Because here's what no one tells you about infidelity. It doesn't just destroy trust. It destroys identity. You begin to question if you were ever enough. If you were too boring. Too predictable. Too safe. But the truth is, I wasn't too anything. He was just too weak to face the weight of his own dissatisfaction. And instead of fixing what we had, he reached for something easier. So, why did I stay? Because I still believed in him. Because I believed in me more. And because I needed to see if the man I married still lived under all that shame. Do I still think about that night? Of course. There are nights when I remember the way they looked at each other. And sometimes, I remember how powerful I felt, knowing I had seen it coming and let it happen. Because knowledge is power. And in that moment, I had all of it. People ask me if I regret what I did. If I regret letting her in. Letting him fall. Letting myself watch the worst unfold. And I always say the same thing. No. Because if I hadn't, I'd still be wondering. I'd still be lying to myself about a marriage that had already begun to rot. I needed to see the truth, raw and unfiltered. Only then could I decide what to do with it. To every woman listening, watching, or reading this. If you ever feel someone coming for what's yours, don't always scream. Don't always fight. Sometimes, you let them walk in. You hand them the rope. And you watch who ties the knot. Because what people do when they think you're not watching, that's who they really are. And to those who think I was too calm, too quiet, too forgiving. Let me ask you something. If you were me, would you have done the same? That's the end.